Something really strange happened in 2023. Not one, not two, but three of my friends in three different businesses just shut their businesses down and walked away. Let's discuss. So I'll focus on one of the businesses primarily since all three fit a very similar pattern. And the main business is a juice bar. And what's funny is I gave them the worst piece of business advice in my career. When they gave me the business plan, which was a pretty rough sketch of what their idea was, I just told them, I said, look, people aren't going to pay this kind of money for a cup of juice. I was very wrong. I could not have been more wrong. They had two really incredible years of very rapid growth. And I was very excited for them. And I continued to consult with them and help them grow through their journey. They had some really great ideas with marketing, very guerrilla style, ground up organic, what we now call organic marketing. And they had catchy names for things, just really brilliant. And they were in the right part of town for people to buy expensive juice. Well, year three is when they had an opportunity to a partner approached them. This wasn't somebody that they knew very well, and they offered to go in a partnership so that they could expand to a second location. And they desperately wanted to grow at that point. Well, at that time, I told them not to expand for two primary reasons. One, they didn't have a standard operating procedure, so they had a good formula in place for success, and they were clearly doing very, very well. But they didn't know exactly why. They hadn't sat and written down. They had the recipes and things like that, opening and closing procedure for employees. But as far as the playbook, they didn't have one at all. And I said, you should never expand if you don't understand what is working and what's not working here, because you're not going to be able to be in two places at one time. And somebody can always refer to that book. And this is true for any type of business, whether it's retail juice business or selling used clothes. It doesn't matter. There should be some type of SOP. The second reason I discouraged them from going in with this person is they weren't very deeply connected. This person was an outsider. They weren't part of their core friend group. They hadn't known them for very long. And this person was from out of town. So there was a lot of question marks. Not that I didn't have any reason to think they were a bad person. It's just there were too many unknowns. And again, plus they didn't have an SOP. So for those two reasons, I said, absolutely don't do it. Well, they did it. And that location failed. It failed miserably. It was a very, very expensive, it was in one of the most expensive parts of that city. And a very long legal battle ensued between them and this partner. I should have also mentioned too that had they just waited another 6 months to a year, they could have financed or had the money to open up a second place on their own. So financially, they didn't even really need this person. So this drug on, and the legal battle drained them financially and emotionally and made it really tough. So by the end of that, they actually ended up closing their first very successful location. They closed the failed partnership location, and they at the end, towards the end, they opened a third location, which did pretty well because again, they had the formula. Unfortunately, they just had it in their heads. But at a certain point, they just got burnt out from the entire journey. The cost of everything was going up, and although they were still profitable, they just decided to walk away. They got burned out from the constant revolving door of employees, and costs of everything were going through the roof. So, obviously 2023 things and things are still going up, but things were going up pretty crazy. I would say from 2020 to 2023, there was a real run up of food prices and supply prices. But I had never seen people just walk away from a business. In retrospect, if you think about it, when I approached them in year one or year two for them to write everything down, the alternative is they could have sold that last business and sold the winning formula, the book, because when you sell franchises, because I had initially told them when they were doing so well in that first location, I said, look, you have proof of concept here. It's all working really good. You've got numbers. You can show people that you're bringing in money. I said, you duplicate this success at another location and you have the formula, and maybe it might even be better to have a third location. You could sell franchises, because all a franchise is you're selling the playbook, because entrepreneurs, to reduce their risk, they're willing to pay a lot more to walk in to a formula that already works. And they clearly had a winning strategy, both in store and their marketing. They did not do that. So they just walked away. So you have to ask yourself, would you rather walk away with no money or at least get 30 grand for all your hard work? And one of the reasons why they constantly told me that they hadn't written the SOP is that they didn't have time. Well, they could have outsourced it. They could have hired a consultant to come in and watch them and have discussions with them. It's just like a ghostwriter for a biography. If you want to write your biography, you don't necessarily, if you're not a good writer, you don't have to sit down and write the manuscript. You can hire somebody. A matter of fact, most famous people, they don't write their own autobiography. Somebody else writes it, a writer, somebody that gets paid, and then they get to put their name on it. So there really wasn't any excuse. And they probably could have walked away with about 30 grand because of what they knew about what was successful in their business. And even if that consultant had cost $2,000, which it probably wouldn't have been that much, but let's say if it was, that's $28,000 in profit. But to blow up a profitable business was shocking to me because so many people close their businesses down because they're not making money. But just in that 1 year, three people closed businesses down. And of course, they all had high turnover and they were frustrated about the rising costs of everything. And one of my favorite business books, which is Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, he talks about the phenomenon of entrepreneurs destroying their own business and why, they get burnout, they get frustrated. And I've got this. This is actually straight from the book here. He calls it the 5 assassins that kill your success. So a lot of times what he'll say in the book is that an entrepreneur will roll a hand grenade into their own business and blow it up just to get away from it. So they self-detonate it because they don't see any other way out. But here is very interesting. He says, overall, the subconscious need for uncertainty and chaos comes out in one of 5 ways, which he calls the 5 time assassins to entrepreneurial success. Number one, and this is just brief. You can pick up the book. I'll put a link in the description. Again, it's the most recommended business book in the list. It's even mentioned in my first book, Scintilla, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in the as yet untitled LinkedIn book that will be out early next year. So number one is the staller. You sabotage your own success by hesitating on big decisions. Number two, the speed demon. You make rapid decisions, such as hiring the quickest, easiest, cheapest option, and then you find yourself in the same position again. Well, the juice store was very much fell into category 2. Number 3, the supervisor. You fail to properly train while micromanaging others, failing to empower them to learn and grow. And then you're a prisoner to your own business if you don't learn how to delegate. And there's a big difference, and I won't get into it here. We'll speak about it on other videos, but the big difference between delegation, which is a very good and positive thing that I encourage, and abdication, where you just throw the task to someone. You don't give them the definition of done, which is also explained in Buy Back Your Time. And abdication causes a lot of problems, employee theft, embezzlement. I mean, it opens the doors to so many things. So number 4 is the saver. You have money in the bank, but you don't understand the value in spending it on growth opportunities. You let it grow like a nest egg instead of investing it in your own business. Now, I know somebody watching this, you know who you are. That's definitely you. Number 5, the self-medicator. Wow, that's a tough one. You turn to food, alcohol, or other vices to reward yourself when you have success. Then you rush to the same destructive activities to escape failure or pain. There's a lot of people, a lot of hardcore, hardworking, good entrepreneurs that destroy themselves through a variety of substances. The hospitality industry, the hotel industry, restaurants, they're rife with addiction. I worked in that industry and I saw it. It was unbelievable. And I don't think I've told the full story on camera just yet, and now is not the time, but the restaurant industry actually made me quit drinking. When you have access to unlimited alcohol, it's some scary things could happen. And I think the owner of the restaurant and myself as general manager, we woke up too many mornings inside the restaurant in the booth, rubbing our eyes. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. And that was the last career that I had before I went to college. I think I went to college at 30 or 31. I went a little long in the tooth, and I went on the GI Bill. Went to the University of Louisville and got my degree in business management. So I wanted to go over that. Now I'm going to pull Eva into the conversation. And I want to talk about two things related to that. Also, two other great books I recommend.
In Seth Godin's The Dip, the central idea is that almost any worthwhile endeavor has a dip, a period of struggle or challenge that separates those who succeed from those who give up too soon. Godin advises that you should quit when you're facing a dead end, meaning a situation where no amount of effort is likely to lead to success. On the other hand, you should persist when you recognize that the dip is a temporary obstacle that leads to a valuable goal on the other side. In short, quit the things that are leading nowhere, but push through the dips that are strategically worth it. That's the core of how to know when to quit and when to keep going.
A lot of people talk about the anecdotal story about the miner who stopped right before they got to the gold. So that's very typical. But what I want you to do next, Eva, is to talk about Annie Duke. She wrote a great book called Quit that I read just very recently. Now she gives more of a framework about knowing when to quit, how to quit. What were the bullet points in her book where she determines when to quit?
Annie Duke is all about using a systematic framework to decide when to walk away from something. She suggests a few key principles. First, she talks about setting kill criteria in advance, which means having clear signals that tell you it's time to quit before you're emotionally in the thick of it. She also emphasizes the importance of considering opportunity cost, realizing that sticking with one path means you might be missing out on better opportunities elsewhere. Another point she makes is the idea of using outside input or a quitting coach, basically someone who can help you see the situation more objectively. And finally, she encourages people to normalize quitting as a strategic choice rather than a failure.
In my humble opinion, I believe that Seth Godin's book is more geared towards creatives and artists. And I feel that Annie Duke's book is much more relevant to entrepreneurs and business owners. I would say read both because Seth Godin is a master of marketing. His books are very enjoyable to read. But Annie Duke, I was really impressed with her book. I wanted to talk about those cases because, again, it's shocking that people would walk away from a profitable business. If you get started correctly and you get Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time, E-Myth Mastery is another good one that helps you start off on the right path. But I would say the thing that really burns entrepreneurs out is they don't learn to duplicate themselves. And even just starting the podcast, all along this process, I've had a virtual assistant to help me. And it's great to have somebody to bounce ideas off of. If you don't have the money to have a virtual assistant or to have employees, I understand. At the very least, you should have an informal mastermind group. Even better to be involved in a formal one. The Genius Network, which is run by Joe Polish and his book, What's in It for Them. So the book is really good, but he runs the Genius Network, which is, it's not cheap, but it's a pretty decent mastermind group. But you can get online and reach out to people. You can reach out to me. Like I said, I've sometimes I'm wrong. Like my buddy, I didn't discourage him, but I said based on what he had shown me, I didn't think that it was a valid concept. And then they did well. And I think all my advice after that was really good. But as far as my biggest mistake was telling him not to start the business. Like, subscribe, share, ask questions. I've asked in these videos for people to post what they're doing, promote what you're doing, drop it in the comments. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.